Good evening to our second budget workshop. Our order this evening will be as follows. Curriculum and instruction will be number 1, Heather. Number 2 will be special education with Elizabeth. Number 3 will be student services with Shayna. And number 4 will be cleaning us up with technology and instructional services. So we have high hopes for our last at bat.
Save the best for last.
So our last budget workshop, you also heard from us our budget guidelines, and everything that we spoke of at our last budget presentation is online after this evening. Tonight will be online, etc. So for those that aren't online tonight, you can always go back to our website and review our materials. So with that, I welcome Heather Clayton to come up, our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction.
Good evening. I want to start by thanking the business office, Rachel, Terry, Mike. You were tremendously helpful in this process, as well as Liz Norton, my assistant. She is also amazing, so thank you. It was a team effort, and I really appreciate all the support. It's a pleasure to bring this budget to all of you tonight. So just beginning with our curriculum mission, all the decisions that we make are anchored in the desire to have rigorous and authentic learning experiences for our students and to prepare them to be contributing members of a global society. And this is just a brief overview of the responsibilities of the curriculum office. Just to highlight a couple things on here is in terms of the curriculum and assessment, writing, and implementation, I want to just give a thank you to our standards leaders. There are 24 of them, and they are integral in leading this work with the teachers. They do have a new curriculum template that they're using, and particularly in science, there's been a lot of changes, many hours of investigations added, new materials and supplies, new courses. So I just really can't emphasize that first bullet enough. Textbooks and supplementary resources, data for decision making, aligning with mandates. As you know, we've had some new courses added, changes to courses that have required a lot of forethought and thinking on the parts of our departments. So we really appreciate that, as well as our BOCES services and our career internship program. So just a brief history of our budget. 510 is the line that really addresses our curriculum writing and steering committee payments. This also includes our 2.0 FTE that we have in the curriculum office. It's myself and Liz Norton. For curriculum writing and steering committee payments, a lot of that work is happening over the summer. So not during the school year, but those are summer projects. And the standards leaders present proposals for that and are really thorough in terms of their approach and their work with their curriculum development. Our textbook purchases are also in this code, and we are able to offset with our textbook aid, which is extremely helpful. Our travel and conference and our BOCES services. I do just want to speak to, it looks like a dramatic increase on this slide, but this is because originally, or in the past, we used to get budget transfers for every encumbrance that was going out to BOCES, and it wasn't an efficient process because those transfers were over $75,000. So the business office, being as smart as they are, decided to give us those appropriations up front, and then they get the reimbursements on the back end, on the revenue side. So it looks like this 20% bump, but I swear it's not me. And it was an efficiency built in from the business office that I know was discussed at the board table last year and also this September, but I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight that on this slide. And our 511 code, you'll see that we have just a modest 0.92 increase in our standards area. This is our salaries and stipends for our 24 standards leaders. their memberships, supplies, and travel and conference expenses. We saw about a $13,000 increase in the need for science supplies this year when we added the investigations for living environment and for earth and space science. It was an unexpected $13,000. So we have budgeted that much additionally for chemistry and physics, but we offset it in other places in the budget. So we were able to trim and reallocate that money to science supplies so that it's just a small increase to accommodate that. We do have our career internship program. This is another slide that shows like a significant change. And just to give you a little bit of history with our career internship program, this used to be a full-time position that was budgeted through the Student Services Office. Last year, that was then budgeted through the Curriculum Office. And what we have is we have a .6 released business teacher who oversees and coordinates our career internship program. And we have a PIAP member who handles the clerical piece of the community service hours. So what you see here with the yellow bar and that reduction, that is a match of what was our expenditures last year when we first moved this to the curricular budget. So it's not any impact on the program. It's just righting the ship in terms of the numbers and kind of redistributing the positions so it's better meeting the needs of students. Our BOCES budget had a slight increase, 4.93%. I do want to mention one thing that you'll see here on this slide that wasn't there last year is the Challenger field trip. So of about the $25,000 increase, about $17,000 of that was the Challenger field trip that our fifth graders went on, and we just thank our PTSA for their support financially of that trip for our students. Other things you see in there are our BOCES kits, our visiting author program, and our cultural arts. Our homeschooling coordination saw a slight increase. Our Regent scoring, and then the coordination of our textbooks for our non-public schools. And our summer school program, we're projecting a 10% increase for next year. The numbers have held pretty steady since COVID in terms of summer school. We see a lot more kids taking exams than actually participating in summer school. We had probably across the district only 18 students were enrolled in summer school for remediation, but we had close to 100 taking exams. So I just wanted to mention that. So here you see how our proposed budget is broken out, with the bulk of it sitting in curriculum and instruction. Our smallest amount, obviously, is our career internship program. Here's another view for you. And again, that $1 million budget, it looks like such a robust increase, but that's really just putting that BOCES money for shared services up front rather than doing the transfers and getting the aid back. And when you look at our standards budget, 94% of that is allocated for our standards leaders, salary stipends, and their summer work days. They have big responsibilities, and they just do a tremendous job as teacher leaders and, boots on the ground getting all this tremendous work done, so can't thank them enough. So just to wrap it up, some quick celebrations. At kindergarten through fifth grade, we did complete our ELA program review, and we have our elementary academic council actually digging into those recommendations tomorrow. We are having a successful pilot for our Math Amplify program that I mentioned to you back in September. And that committee, obviously with the textbook approval process and approval from the board, is moving forward with implementation, or like to move forward with implementation of that program next year. The pilot teachers have noticed there's a lot of increased rigor and engagement on the part of the students, and their kids are doing things that traditionally they wouldn't have imagined they're able to do at this point in the year. So tremendously positive feedback from the pilot teachers. They've had opportunities to go visit Penfield schools and see Amplify in action. They've had walkthroughs with the representatives from Amplify. They've had lots of different Zooms and collaborations. And our elementary core standards leaders have been tremendous in leading this work. We have integrated the learning behaviors now on the 612 report cards, and the grading ad hoc committee will be getting together again, actually tomorrow afternoon, big day tomorrow, to revisit that and see, who we need to survey to gain feedback on that, see how the grading practices are going, and if there's any changes that need to occur. Grade 6 mathematics did a lot of work this summer with their honors program and their regular math program. If you remember last spring, I spoke to you about the math grouping ad hoc recommendations, and that came out of the recommendations. So that work has happened and is continuing to be reviewed. And we had the revision of our earth science and living environment courses that now align with our next gen standards. Looking ahead, our Instructional Leadership Council is overseeing our multi-tiered system of support, which really looks at how do we provide academic intervention support through general education, how do we provide behavioral support through general education for our students in need of that. So our Instructional Leadership Council is doing a program review of our current MTSS and how we're doing, identifying indicators of what an exemplary model would look like, and identifying what would be high-quality universal screeners, progress monitoring tools, entry and exit criteria, and all the things that go into that. So that's like a long-term thing that's happening. We're doing a lot of work with our elementary teachers around integrating their curriculum and ensuring that it's viable, given that there's only so many hours in a school day and there's a lot of things on their plates as they engage in that work with their students. Implementing the recommendations from our program review, continuing to align our science at the secondary level to the new chemistry and physics. We also have Algebra 2 coming that we need to do some work around, and we have a new exam in ELA as well in June 26. We're continuing to work on integrating the computer science digital fluency standards, and we're also focused on our one-to-one device initiative. So whereas we may be adding textbooks at the elementary level, what we've seen is as we move to Windows 11, so we now have some textbooks online, which offsets the cost of those books. We've also purchased a majority of our AP texts that are very expensive and very large. So moving forward, that won't be a continued expense. It's actually been happening throughout the past 3 years. So that's another really good piece of news. We've already purchased for AP Stats Chemistry. Our biology went online. We already have purchases in for AP World and AP Physics. And our English novels will also see a reduction in price. So that will offset the cost of the Amplify program. And in closing, this is just a summary table of our proposed budget. And if you were to take out that $150,000 that's put in up front for the BOCES services, our increase is like a 0.48. It's very small. So just wanted to kind of flesh that out for you so you could see that it looks like a 7.2% increase, but it's actually not that much. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Heather, can you talk a little bit about the Amplify and other districts that may have used it and how the results are compared to ours with state assessments?
So some of our neighboring districts perform as well as us, if not better, that are using the program. What we found is it's very vertically aligned, and the tasks have what we call a low floor and a high ceiling. So there's an entry point into tasks for every student, but for students in need of a challenge on the other end, there's a lot of supports that way built in. So in addition to the academic intervention supports, there's also the enrichment opportunities. It places the units into a real life context that are engaging and relevant for the kids. And teachers are able to see a coherent scope and sequence for what they're year is going to unfold like in mathematics. And the resource alone will fundamentally change our pedagogy for the better, because it has really pushed our grouping practices into mixed groups and not ability groups. And our opportunity to engage all students with exactly what they need in this resource. And this is probably, I know I've been in the district almost 20 years. I've never seen a full adoption of any math program at the elementary level. So this will be the first time. So that really speaks to the quality of this resource. And there's also very rich professional development that comes with it, which can make or break a program if you don't have the right supports in place. So there'll be a lot of professional development training happening this spring, summer, and then that tapers off. But we'll have a plan to scoop up any new teachers as they're added, or teachers that maybe change grade levels. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Heather, you were 1 minute over. Elizabeth, you have now 14 minutes.
14 minutes it is. Good evening. I will be presenting the Central Services special education portion of the proposed budget. Our special education department, our primary purpose is to support diverse learners and foster an inclusive culture. This is a photo of our Best Buddies group at the Pink the Rink event a couple of weeks ago, just as one example of that. We are responsible for recommending and arranging for programs for preschool age students, and then recommending and providing special education programs for all students ages 5 to 22 who either live in the district or who attend one of the private schools that are located within our district. We also support and provide opportunities for various extracurricular and inclusive opportunities within our community, our school community as well. You will see this evening I'm presenting the central services budget. Just know that the salaries for the majority of our special education providers, so that includes our special education teachers and our paraprofessionals, those are all included within the individual building budgets. As well as the professional development supplies and materials that accompany those providers and our school programs are also attached to the individual building budgets. Just for some context related to the number of students we serve, we currently have 842 students who are between the age of 5 and 22 who receive special education services through our district. That does continue to be an increase over time. You will also see that the majority of our students who receive special education programs and services are within a general education setting for a full day, which is considered more than 80% of their day in general education. And then you can see the other locations and the percentage of students who are served in either less than 40% of the day in general education, partial day general education in special settings, and then separate school settings. So the central services budget for special education falls into 3 categories. The first is the special education office. So that this area includes the salaries of the district office team, so that's administrators and our clerical support to oversee our special education programs and processes. This also includes district office supports such as interpreters, special contracts, legal fees, as well as any of the summer work that takes place. The Committee on Special Education runs 12 months out of the year. So parents and teachers can make referrals at any time of year. We do evaluations throughout the summer. So that's all included as well in the district central services portion. The second portion of our budget is the centralized services for speech language and adapted physical education. So those 2 departments are housed from a budgetary standpoint in the central services budget. We currently have 13.3 speech language therapists who provide services to our students across all 9 buildings. And we range between 3 to 4 FTEs of adapted physical education teachers as well. I believe we're about 3.4 right now. That ebbs and flows based on individual student needs throughout the school year. This budgetary area also includes all of the needed supplies and materials to support those 2 areas. You will see an increase in the proposed budget for 25-26 in this area, and that is related to our transition of occupational therapists and physical therapists from BOCES to Pittsford employees. You may recall that at the last board meeting, you approved job titles of physical therapist and occupational therapist. We are looking to start with hiring one of each for the upcoming school year. So this is a shift of adding those 2 positions into this code. On the flip side, our final and third area related to outside placements and services, you will see a decrease because this is where all of our BOCES services come from. So we took one occupational therapist and one physical therapist out of this BOCES code. So that was just a direct transfer over. We have run all of the numbers related to those positions, much thanks to Terry Hassler, who has worked very closely with me on that, as well as Rachel and Mike and our BOCES colleagues, that we are essentially budget neutral when moving from having these services provided by BOCES versus providing them ourselves when we add in the supplies and materials and things. It works out to be just about even. So that's a direct just move from one area to the other. This outside placements and services area also includes the BOCES services that we provide to students who are attending the private schools within Pittsford. We do use BOCES to provide consultant teacher, resource room, and related services to our students who attend Allendale, Columbia, St. Louis, our private schools within the district. And then those services are billed back to the districts of residence for those students. This also includes state ed approved private special education schools. So when our committee recommends a private special education school, such as Norman Howard, Mary Carriola, Holy Childhood, that's also included in this area. So in special education, there are also a couple of unique areas of budget support that are special education specific. So just want to share those with you as well. First, we have federal grants. So there are 2 federal grants that support students who receive special education services. This is just the trend over the past few years of those allocations. They tend to be fairly stable over time. We don't receive the allocations until late in the spring. So we don't know what to count into next year's budget until that time, but fortunately, they've been fairly stable for us. We do use this funding. We are required to distribute a certain portion of it to our private schools and the approved special education schools. And then we also use the remainder to support some of our functions of the Committee on Special Education, as well as specialized services and supports for students who have individual needs that require certain services or supports. We also receive Medicaid reimbursement. We can claim reimbursement for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech language therapy. So for any of our students who receive these services who are also Medicaid eligible, Medicaid reimburses us for a portion of those services. We received just over $86,000 last year for Medicaid reimbursement. That was about a $10,000 increase over the previous year. There are also a couple of New York State aid areas for higher cost programs. So that's called STAC aid. And we received $987,000 in STAC high cost aid during the last school year. You can see the breakdown of the difference between public high cost, private excess cost. Those are all for students who have individual specialized special education programs, and they're just based on the individual cost of those programs and a certain percentage that we receive back each year. So the amount that we received in the past school year was based on the students' placements from the previous year, from 22-23. So the funding we receive this year will be based on our last year's placements in this area. Related to some successes and accomplishments in special education, I am proud of the fact that we continue to support most of our students with disabilities in general education settings. In addition to fostering an inclusive culture, it's also important that our students are able to maintain the learning alongside their general education peers and learn the same standards that their peers are learning. We also continue to have a very strong partnership with our Special Education Parent-Teacher Association, and we have an active parent advisory group that I'm continuing to meet with quarterly, which has been a very valuable source of input and feedback for me related to our special education programs and processes. We also continue every year to try to make our processes and procedures more efficient so that we can focus more of our time on collaboration and problem solving with families and teams around our students. We continue to have strong participation in and support for 2 varsity unified teams now, bowling and basketball, and our Best Buddies chapters continue to be active across the district. In terms of challenges, we do continue to have wait lists for some of our more specialized out-of-district placements, which can be a challenge for students, families, and staff, as there just are not enough of those programs in the region. So we work really creatively to support students while they're awaiting certain programs. Yes. So our BOCES programs, for example, have a space limitation and a staffing limitation. Actually, not just BOCES, our private programs as well. So BOCES and our private special education schools have both a space limitation and a staffing limitation in being able to offer all of the seats or classrooms that students require. Our BOCES 1 has worked really well over the past few years to be creative, prioritize, the districts in this region so that we have seen a reduction based on their partnership with us. But that's what we've been seeing. And related to that, again, our staffing challenges, especially in related services, as you're all aware, it is becoming with each year increasingly difficult to stay fully staffed in some of the specialty areas. So speech language therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Between both us and BOCES and our private agencies, it's sometimes hard to hire. It is often hard when people are out to fill them with substitutes. You have to obviously have that specialized license to be a substitute in those areas, and there's just a really severe shortage of that. So that has been a significant challenge that is growing. What it means is that we do have delays and gaps in services from time to time as a result of people being out and struggling to find coverage. We do have some really good partnerships with private agencies in the area who have been able to come in and help us. And then we also make up those services for students as soon as we get people in place, including over the summer at times. So students do get all of their service, but it's through working with private companies or private agencies and sometimes providing additional services over the summer. And finally, we do continue to still have the challenge in interpreting the state ed guidance related to programming for students over age 21. You may recall last year that the guidance for us changed, that we are now responsible for providing services for students up until the day before their 22nd birthday, where it used to be the end of the school year in which they turned 21. There continues to be some conflicting guidance that districts are receiving about whether that means the day before the 22nd birthday or whether that means the end of the school year after a student turns 22. So that continues to be a challenge with families and agencies when different school districts or regions are interpreting that differently. And we still hope for more clear guidance to come from the state education department about that one way or the other at some point. So finally, just the proposed budget overall. Again, you will see in the total central services budget, it's essentially flat. It's a 0.11% increase. And again, those places where you'll see the bigger changes, that really directly reflects moving the OTPT from one code into the other. Thank you for letting me share that with you this evening. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, we have our student services, and we are spot on. You brought us back the minute that was owed. So, Shana, you have 15 minutes.
No pressure. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I am proud to share a few updates in student services and focus on the proposed budget for next year. And starting with our Pittsford Sutherland students there who are at Rock to Change this fall. And a huge thank you to Orlando Benzon, who is now in the Human Resources Department, but continues with his equity and inclusion role and supports these types of experiences for our students. So this is the slide that makes, you feel a little bit overwhelmed. As I was going through here looking at the areas of responsibility, I actually realized just the unique gift in student services that we reach our students as they are joining us, sometimes as 4-year-olds for kindergarten screening, and impact every student throughout, whether they need services in English language learning or instructional challenge, whether they are with us through the Urban Suburban program or access one of our specialized programs through our mental health supports, and throughout as they go if there are issues that they are needing support around our code of conduct or through DASA, watching kids grow and then watching them cross the stage. And it's one of the best parts of my job is knowing that I can start the day in a kindergarten classroom and end the day with a group of folks talking about a senior that we're trying to hold accountable while helping them get across the stage. So I feel very lucky to be a part of all of the people who go into making all these different programs work. And as Elizabeth mentioned in her presentation, the asterisks there denote that those different positions are reflected, their salaries are reflected within their individual school budgets. So I'll talk about the folks who are part of the actual student services budget tonight. So we have 3 categories that make up our student services budget, and then we'll talk a little bit about our title grant supports as well. So in the student services office, that's made up of our clerical support, our district registrar, myself, and Maria Hill, who is our coordinator for social and emotional learning. And it looks like we had a pretty big decrease. What you're seeing there is that shift that was increased in the human resources budget. So as our coordinator for equity and inclusivity moved into the director of equity, inclusivity, and personnel, that fell off of our budget actually for this year and proposed for next year. But that's why you see that kind of decrease there. And then also within that central office's budget line, you'll see we have interpreter and translation services. That's for all of the buildings. So if we need translation services for a parent meeting, something of that nature, they can call our office, and we support that for the buildings. We also provide for our non-public schools, so our private schools, Trinity Montessori, St. Louis, and Allendale Columbia. We provide nursing support services, so sometimes it's full-time nursing at Allendale and St. Louis, and a portion of the nursing program at Trinity, and textbooks, some technology support and resources specifically related to their health services and curriculum. And you'll see that's pretty steady throughout the year. And then as those allocations come to us, what we are mandated to provide, typically it ends up being a little bit less than what we propose. So the support services is really kind of the meat of our budget, and the staffing that's involved there is for our English language learning program, so our ENL teachers, and our behavior specialists. So those are district-based, meaning that we can allocate them as needed based on the fluctuating needs of our students. Within that, we also have our tutoring center coordinator, Jessica Sabor, who is over here in central office, and our student and family engagement coordinator, Leilani Thompson, who works throughout the district but really supports the tutoring center as well, and our students who are here. You'll see there was kind of a big jump from 22-23 to 23-24. That was when we brought in the tutoring center position. And if you remember, that was an offset from the BOCES funds that we're no longer using to be able to use BOCES to provide tutoring to students. We were allocating those funds, and then BOCES was unable to fill those positions. And so students were going without that instruction when they weren't able to be in school. So that's where we see that growth there. this line also has our contracts for Pittsford Youth Services, who provide social work services for elementary and middle schools, and our district physician, Dr. Tu. So title grant allocation, similar to what Elizabeth was sharing with the other federal grants, we don't get the allocations until late spring, sometimes early summer. And these grants actually aren't due until the end of August. So a lot of time is spent during the summer working with our private schools. Elizabeth and I actually go to our 3 private schools in our catchment, meet with their leadership, and talk about how they want to use their allocations. We get feedback from them on what our support is providing and help them to meet their goals with the funds that they have available. So in the Student Services Office, this is our 4 title grants. So Title I is for schools that qualify for students that are in the low socioeconomic status subgroup. Title II is for professional learning. Title III is for our English as a New Language program and to support immigrant students. And Title IV is what they call well-rounded education. So we can use it for lots of things like school safety, technology, school health, things of that nature. So this is pretty steady over time, and we collaborate often on how those funds are going to be used in the buildings. We use them mostly for things like social work services, academic intervention for reading and math. We use it for tutoring services for students, and we've been using a lot of our Title III and Title IV to support our ENL summer program. So we've been able to almost fully staff that through tutoring funds that we're allocating for that 3-week program for students in the ENL program. Just to highlight a couple of our accomplishments and successes, our Dignity Act coordinators, so those are the people in each building who are responsible for responding to DASA incidents, have been doing such a phenomenal job, especially the last few years. We've been spending a lot of time together. I'm the Dignity Act coordinator for the district, so we've been looking at how our processes work across our 9 buildings, and really we've had an emphasis on being more consistent in our responses and providing more support for our administrators in the buildings who are trying to investigate consistently and make some decisions around sometimes some pretty tough situations. So we started with looking at what we're doing a few years ago, creating that consistent training for staff and students that they receive annually. And then we created a protocol. So that started this year. We did all the kind of heavy legwork last year and brought it through our different committees. But they have an actual protocol that they follow, whether an incident is founded or not. And that's something that our parents can look at as well to better understand what our responses are. And then this year, we have been talking about our DASA data. So that's what we upload to the state every year. We get it all done in a flurry at the end of the year, and sometimes that's the last we talk about it. So over last summer, we brought all of our building leaders together. We broke down all the data so they could see not only in their own buildings, what are the themes, who are the groups of students who are targeted most often, where is it happening, what time of the year is it happening, and then compare that to the other buildings. So they had some time to really look at, are there changes that they want to make to be more preventative in each building or at each level. And then from that, we decided we really needed to do more tabletop drills. So getting together, we meet regularly as a Dignity Act coordinator team, but we've been using a protocol that our behavior specialists brought us through our U of R behavioral health pediatric team. It's called POP. It's a problem of practice protocol. So it actually helps us walk through a specific protocol. We have an administrator bring a current DASA incident that they're working on, and then all 9 buildings are able to hear about it, ask follow-up questions, ask probing questions, and then that person steps away from the table, and we all brainstorm around what their next step should be. So just bringing different eyes into it and having more of that collective responsibility around how we're responding has been really helpful. We just met a couple weeks ago, and an elementary principal said, "Can you just give us an update when something happens, because I'm really invested in this kid now. I want to know how this turns out." So I think it's also just opening doors and reminding people they're not alone and they can pick up the phone and call each other. So I can't say enough about that group of administrators. They're really focused on doing the right thing and making the best decisions they can. And the other thing I'll just highlight is our tutoring center. Jessica Sabor has done such an amazing job. This week we've been pretty packed down there. We have students here for all sorts of different reasons. And when I look back, thinking that all of those students would not be receiving education and would not be getting up and coming to school, which is so important. So our students are out for a variety of reasons, whether it's mental health, physical health. We have injured students. We have students who are suspended from school, and they would not be in school getting access to a social worker, to a certified teacher. Their administrators come and visit them. Their teachers come and visit them. And most importantly, they get the message that they're still part of our school community, and it makes it much easier for them to transition back to school. So they've been working a lot on communication, not only with the buildings, but also partial hospitalization, other programs in the community. Students are coming to us from all different areas, so just communicating to help their transition to us and back into their programs be as smooth as it can be. And then a few challenges we're up against. As you know, the staffing challenges continue. We've had so much support from Human Resources and Sean Clark. We have a few big mental health positions opening this year, and because we've been able to post for those early, we already feel really confident that we have a great list of highly qualified candidates. So when we're ready and our internal posting process is done, we will be ready to be amongst the first to get out there and fill those positions. And mental health needs here and across the area continue to be an area of concern. Really with Leilon Thompson, who's our Student and Family Engagement Coordinator, we've learned a lot more about resources in the community that we can connect our families to. So we're seeing more and more of that happening within our buildings, but there's still more work to do there. And I think one of the things that you saw on the celebration slide is that we have a group that's just starting to get together to go out and study what some other programs look like in other districts. We're realizing that one of our challenges is we have some groups of students that we know are struggling for different reasons, and they're not responding to historically what we've used for our interventions. And so we're spending a lot of time talking about students that we're trying to move forward and help them with their goals in life. And so we're going to be learning from those different groups and bringing that back so that we can, hopefully in the summer, get together and start to plan, okay, what can we incorporate into what we already do, and are there ways we can better use the resources that we have to be able to meet the needs of our students a little differently. So with that, we don't have any significant changes expected for next year. We do have our contractual salary increases and increases within our contracts with some of our outside providers, but we're pretty flat overall across the department. So with that, if there's any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Shana. Matt, Shane, about you 3 minutes.
I got time. Thank you. Matt Kwiatkowski, Director of Technology. I appreciate you guys having me out here tonight to go over the proposed budget for 25-26 school year. In doing all of this, I do want to say thank you to Mike and Terry for your continued collaboration through all of this and helping to kind of put all this together and bring it all together throughout this entire process. There's a lot going on here. Just some background information on technology services. We've got a couple different areas that our budget supports, one of them being specific to technology services. And we are responsible for the support and the maintenance of both the technical and the instructional side of the systems that are leveraged all throughout the district. Wi-Fi, networking, streaming here that we're doing today, and you name it. We also support the computers, the phones, the tablets, any of the peripherals that are plugging into these devices, the interactive panels that we've been putting in K through 12, the printers, copiers, the servers, and I mentioned Wi-Fi. We also work directly with our teacher, our staff, administration, our students, and our families to continue to support the use of the technology in and outside of school. My instructional team, they provide high-quality professional development on new and emerging technology. We support teachers in the integration of the technology, so making sure that there's a plan, so when we get something, it's not just, here you go out and I'll run off and figure it out. We want to make sure that we can actually have someone there to walk side by side, go through the struggles of figuring out how do we actually get this in your class, get the kids comfortable using it, and having that be part of what they're doing. We also support and maintain the infrastructure all throughout BOCES, all the wiring, all the cabling, cameras, and all that stuff. And we do this with 20 full-time staff members. That is myself, 1 administrative assistant, and we have 10 technicians, 4 instructional technologists, one of them right behind me, 2 audiovisual assistants, 1 performing arts coordinator, 1 print shop and instructional materials operator. So wide range of different abilities and skill sets that we have here. Looking at some of the BOCES support services, we talked a little bit about BOCES tonight, and BOCES support is a much bigger umbrella than just the technology. This is much more than just the stuff that we do. It's stuff that is all-encompassing of many of the areas within the district. So we talk about WinCap, which helps support finance, human resources. We also have professional development systems that is also within our WinCap system. We have Infinite Campus that falls in there, which is our student information system, special education, IEP Direct, Family ID, the communication and the alert system, and then also Office 365 and email services that they help support. So there's a lot to be proud of, and I know, for one, I couldn't do any of this without the team that I have behind me, literally, Anthony that is behind me, and then everyone else that I mentioned earlier. They are a remarkable team that every day ceases to amaze me. They've closed 8,600 help desk requests this year. On average, we're supporting 4,200 guest connections daily. There's 434 million events that are happening monthly on the network that we're looking at, we're keeping track of, we're making sure that anything that's happening, we get notified at all hours of the day. And we have a pretty reliable network, about around 98.2% of the time. We also, this year, we are really diving into looking at our current practices and trying to figure out ways that we can enhance how we set up our laptops, looking for efficiencies, looking at how to see what can we train different people on how to do. We look at automating workflows into a digital environment. And we also helped install the new PA system, which I think some of you went over to Jefferson Road recently and took a tour of that, and looking at the audio enhancement within that classroom, which is a pretty neat project. On the instructional side, some of the highlights from this past summer, we've provided professional development on Microsoft Teams as we continue to use that for the daily communication. EdTech camps, which are these mini sessions that are really driven by teachers in the classroom, showing what they're doing and actual application of the instructional technology. The Clear Touch boards, as I mentioned, those are throughout 7 through 12. Adobe Express, computer science and digital fluency standards that we continue to integrate into really at the elementary level, and various other instructional software programs. We've also worked collaboratively with teachers and students to explore what it means to be part of a digital community. I think having the technology is important, but also understanding how to use that and be part of that digital environment and knowing what's right and what's wrong and where all that all comes into play. I think it's a very important thing that we have to continue to help our kids understand. On the other side, there's using digital tools to create and think critically and create digital artifacts. So what can you do with this technology that is not necessarily possible with a pen and paper, right? So using the technology to kind of enhance what you're doing and broaden who we're sharing this with. And also, one of the continued efforts that we've been doing is looking at STEM and STEAM-based activities. We've got various kits. This here is a dash and dot robot where the kids are able to program this and they're able to go through the city street, and this was I believe a 3rd grade classroom. But we've got smaller little robots that some are based on touch, sight, sound, all different kinds of things, and as well as things that are not necessarily technology based, but more just interactive with Kiva planks, which are more building blocks and coming up with storytelling that go along with it. And snap circuits that go along with more science-based stuff. So really, really fun, engaging. The kids get really involved, very hands-on type of stuff. But with all of this, there are obstacles, there are challenges like everything. There's always this expectation of just a 24/7 uptime with limited resources, implementing new systems and trying to develop that shared understanding so everybody has that common knowledge of it. Balancing the innovation with our security practices and wanting to make sure that, security is at the forefront of what we're doing. And also addressing those daily requests while continuing to find time to just refine our own practices, right? I want to continue to have my folks continue to learn and enhance what they're doing, and just that long-term replacement cost. So our budget is supported partially by categorical state aid for both hardware and software. And what that is it's a per pupil allocation from the state based upon enrollment at each of the buildings. We get money for those two. We also, by purchasing through BOCES, we generate state aid for the following fiscal year. And then also we have the technology reserve. That is our reserve savings account that does require voter approval to take money out of there. And that helps offset some of the budgetary increases that you're going to see. And then also we do have federal E-rate, which is an additional funding source that can be used for eligible purchases. This is something that does help support part of the overall cost of the purchases. So looking to the future for the end of this year and really next year, we have our one-to-one renewal cost, which is for grade 6, grade 9, and some of a subset of the elementary students, and that's around $900,000. We also have teacher devices, interactive flat panels, which will bring us to closure of that project, and then also a network switch upgrade for both Sutherland, Calkins Road, and transportation maintenance and food service, and that one is an E-rate eligible project. So looking at the budget over the last couple of years, you'll see from the 23 school year to the 24 school year, there was an increase there. And really that was an opportunity last year to kind of right-size the budget and get to a point where we're supporting the one-to-one initiative and also supporting some of the cybersecurity programs that we were putting into place. That increase is offset by, in the next slide, you'll see a little bit more detailed how that is all broken up from the 23 to the 24, and I'll show you that on the next one. I do want to point out the top 6 expenses. That really the number one expense in the budget is almost half of it being allocated to salaries, and then the next one really going to the equipment side of things. As I mentioned, looking at last year's budget, that increase really came from, the majority of it came from capital reserves. That is our savings account. As well as an increase to contractual services for things that are supporting our cybersecurity practices, as well as just some contractual services for wiring and various support maintenance that we have. And also additional BOCES equipment that's going to, again, support some of the one-to-one devices. Looking at that capital reserve over a multi-year period to help support our one-to-one initiative, we're looking at over the next couple of years, as we start to draw down from the technology reserve that was developed in 2014, that's now coming to an end. We've got to draw that money out. As we look to the 27-28 school year, we're going to deplenish that. And last year, we also created another reserve, the Instructional Technology Reserve. That'll go for another, I think it's 10 years. And we'll continue to draw off of that to help support that budget increase, all right, that we talked about on the last slide. On the BOCES support side, as I mentioned, that was really the umbrella that supports many of the things outside of just technology services. But you'll see here from the 24 to 25, it is about a 6% increase, where some of that is in part due to just contractual services. As things are for year over year, there's just increases to the services that they're charging for. But that's also helping to support some of the pilot programs that we're looking to put into place for K through 8. So overall, looking at the budget specific to technology services, it's around a 0.2%, so relatively flat. And then the BOCES, like I said, is around a 6%, and with the highlight being some of the contractual service increases that we see year over year, and really looking at helping with the K through 8 program for universal screening, personalized learning, and progress monitoring in both math and ELA, as we're looking to pilot that. questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Thank you.
So it is 6:55. We have 5 minutes before our board meeting begins. Jason, do you want to come up here for a second? Just say hi to the board. I'm hoping that it gets approved. This is our new Barker Road principal. No, you don't have to go up to the thing. No, I just want to say hi. No, just say hi. This is who everyone's going to be hopefully voting favorably on tonight. Good to see you, Jason. Thanks for coming tonight. You're welcome.